Welcome to the groundbreaking news program that delves into the heart of Mormonism, your weekly window into the unique intersection of news, history, and culture that resonates with the tapestry of Mormonism. So whether you are tuning in from the heart of Utah or joining us from around the world, your favorite news program starts now, where news meets insight and the stories of our faith unfold.
All right. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast, everybody. Rebecca Biblioteca, Radio Free Mormon. How are the two of you tonight?
Good evening and happy St. Patrick's Day to the both of you.
Look at that.
Happy. Are you wearing green, RFM? I guess your tie is sort of an off. It is. I'm wearing Emerald City green. Yes, full on.
I'm a little bit more subtle with my holiday observance.
Yes.
But yes, green it is.
And I'll just note the triangles in my shirt are green. And that's as far as I got. The rest of the shirt.
You'll just have to take your word for that.
Yeah, I'd have to get it really close if people want to zoom in and see the triangles. But happy St. Patty's Day to all of you. This is the Mormon Newscast. It is March 17th, 2025. Glad to be joined by both of you. And let's jump into it. So tonight, the big story, and I think this is huge, is Utah fire chief and judge charged with child sexual abuse. There's an investigation going on. I don't know if I know there's charges with one of them, and I think the other one is under investigation for sure at this moment.
They're both in custody, and they've both been charged.
Yep. And then we've got, so that'll be the big story tonight. That'll be Radio Free Mormon who's giving us that story. Then we've got a Fairview LDS Temple update, which Rebecca Biblioteca will give us, as well as Benson Boone, Mormon No More. And then we'll talk for a moment about a new book, a historical book that the church has come out with on the young women's. And then we've got a story accepted to BYU 4 decades later. And it wasn't just one person, was it, Rebecca?
Oops, no, not at all. It was a whole bunch of people, and I did a little detective work. This will be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be a fun story. And we'll finish off the night with, is Night Temple a thing? And so with that, Radio Free Mormon, take us into our lead story.
Well, before we even get to that lead story, we have another lead story. And this has to do with the late-breaking word of Latter-day Struggles podcasters, Valerie and Nathan Homaker. Is that how I pronounce it correctly, Rebecca?
I think so.
Because you know these people, right?
Yeah, I do know. Yes, I think Valerie and I have podcasted together on Steve Pinacker's show before when we were all just barely starting out.
Well, they have a very successful podcast trying to help people out with mental issues, emotional issues, a lot of them stemming from the church and like all licensed people. And I understand she's a licensed therapist. I believe he's an ophthalmologist. And but yeah, not trying to direct anybody, but trying to help them achieve the greatest outcome for them personally, regardless of where that journey takes them. So this is something that was posted by Jana Reese, who has done a complete write-up on this, I believe. She says, breaking news, Valerie Homaker and Nathan Homaker, co-hosts of the popular Latter-day Struggles podcast, have resigned their LDS Church membership in order to avoid being excommunicated later this month. This was all happening without my knowledge. They were not specifically charged with apostasy for things they have said on the podcast, but for over a year and a half, their local church leaders have been circling the wagons because they don't believe the Hamakers consistently follow the prophet. On a personal note, once again, this is from Jana Reese. On a personal note, I'm getting to tell this story because for the last 6 months, I have been embedded as a researcher in one of Valerie's weekly support groups for people who are struggling with their Mormon faith, which is the topic of the book I'm writing. I've never seen her do what she is being accused of, which is leading people out of the church. Rather, she helps people talk through multiple sides of the issue or the issues and offers validation and support for the pain they've experienced, which is often considerable. Then they make their own decisions. Why is that so threatening? And with that question, Jana Reese concludes her post. There's some comments over here on the right side of the slide, which I think, Rebecca, you put together. Are these comments related to Janice Post?
Yeah, well, this is the couple themselves saying that they are going to release a podcast episode telling us what happened. And so they just kind of were saying, stay tuned. And that podcast has since been released. A lot of people have listened. It's very heartbreaking because people just love this couple. You know, they're just wonderful, warm, certainly not trying to make anybody take steps they're not ready to take or would even take at all. And as you said, it sounds like the stake president said, you know, we know that you follow Jesus, but we don't think you follow the prophet. So, you know, put that where you'd like to put it. Interesting. And the other issue, of course, was tithing. As a lot of people, including Jana Reese herself, have said very publicly, we are choosing to pay tithing to a charity that means something to us of our choice. And, you know, kind of roulette, stake presidents, bishops either have a problem with that or they let it slide. But a lot of people are making that decision.
Maybe you can get excommunicated for not paying tithing.
If the idea is that you're following Jesus, but not the prophet, like, which one should you follow? Which
you
one
think they'd be on the same trajectory? At least that's what I was taught.
Not in polar opposite directions, huh?
I was taught that you cannot follow one without following the other. To follow the prophets is to follow Jesus, and to follow Jesus is to follow the prophets.
Yeah, it's the Pythagorean theorem. It is. What they said in their post was, we will not be burnt at the stake center. So I thought that was very clever, meaning that they knew that this was going to be happening, and they just simply chose to not give up any power, to not let anyone think they had anything over them, and to just on their terms resign their membership. But I can imagine they're sad about it because, you know, that's their group. Those are the people that they talk to and work with. So it's very sad. And I made a little meme today about the Salem witch trials. And of course I had Natasha there in the court, and then I had Valerie, and then I had Julie Hanks, because we have seen some things that make us concerned a little bit for her, you know, in sort of this kind of avenue. So, and I just think, you know, these strong voices of these women therapists who are really trying to help people with real problems. This is what they're doing, and they're making a difference, and yet they're being silenced inside the church.
Yeah, I don't want to draw any invidious comparisons, but it does remind me of the famous line from Kirk to Khan in Star Trek II. You've managed to kill practically everyone else, but like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target. Remember that line?
I do.
Yeah, that's a great line.
It's a great
So
line.
Anyway, let's go and see what's next.
Yeah, and again,
oh my God, this is actually breaking news from Rebecca.
This is breaking news. I know, we had our slideshow so nicely locked down. We were all so proud, ready to just jump in. And then I'm like, oh no, Latter-day Struggles, we have to add that. And then while I was commuting home on my commuter train, I was made aware that through a stake president locally, the LDS Church has tried one, I guess, last time, Hail Mary, to send a letter to the town council of Fairview. So I'm just going to read this very quickly. This literally came out just within the hour. We've all podcasted to death about this. As you see, there's a picture of the McKinney Temple, the original plan. We had Mayor Lesnar on a podcast on Mormonish, and just yesterday, Steve Pinecker had him on. It was very interesting. If you have a chance, go check that out, especially the comments. His audience is faithful, and I feel like we need to wash some of their mouths out with soap. I was actually very surprised at some of the comments about Mayor Lesnar and his appearance.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Go you mean his appearance on the show or his physical appearance?
Yeah, well, no, not his physical. He's a very handsome man. No, his appearance on the show, calling him a liar, saying things like poppycock, right? And then there were yes, even worse than that. And then there were comments defending him, saying, I want to be a good neighbor. So it's an interesting microcosm. Now, I think over 200 comments at this point to go and look and see how mostly faithful on Steve Pinecker's channel, Mormon Book Reviews, reacted to Henry Lesnar, just telling his story. I mean, he was just straight shooting, folksy. He just told people how it was. It's a very good interview. Anyway, so after that,
this letter from a stake president?
What was that?
This letter's from a stake president?
This letter is from, and this is so ironic because on both of these programs and a whole bunch of other media, like the Dallas Morning News, he has been saying, I would like to sit down with a decision maker. I would like someone to respect me as the highest elected official in Fairview and look me in the eye, shake my hand, and we talk this through. And he said, I'm willing to go to Salt Lake. I mentioned that on the newscast a couple of weeks ago. And so here comes this letter. It is from President Daniel M. Trithal of the Allen, Texas stake. This is a stake president who is sending a letter to the town from the church. I guess we're assuming that this
If I were
is.
the church's lawyers and I didn't know about this, I would be really pissed off.
That's what I'm saying. It's very ironic that he's saying, please, man to man. And what you may not know about Henry Lessner is that he, in his profession, is a top negotiator around the world with governments and also executives. Like, he knows his stuff. He works in these circles that are high level. And this, a person next door who, I don't know who the stake president is, maybe he's a plumber, and he sends this letter. So I'll just take a second to read it because it just came in, and it's kind of the next part of the continuing saga. Remember, there is an intent to sue. So this is kind of the church's last, I think they see it as a Hail Mary. It says, Dear Mayor Lessner and Fairview Town Council members, I write this letter on behalf of the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. On behalf to discuss the proposed temple project in Fairview. We value our relationship with the community and are eager to work together for a positive outcome on this project and our long-term relationship as friends and neighbors. And I'm going to be looking down. So Bill, if you want to flip the slides when I get to where they flip, you can do that. Temples are sacred to us. They are the houses of the Lord. And we've heard a lot of rhetoric now that that's what they're to be called, not temples. Sanctuaries where we commune quietly with him, unite families for eternity, and experience hope and peace. Each of the 376 temples around the world embodies this faith, although only half of them have been built and are not on the schedule to be built. We also deeply cherish our connection with the communities where temples are located. Local members of the church are an integral part of the Fairview community and the surrounding areas. I think that's true. We appreciate the vision for development that preserves Fairview's unique character. That is something the mayor talked about at length, how special Fairview was, the look and the feel, and the zoning protects that, and that's why it's there. We hope to support such an approach and want to reassure residents that the temple will be a beautiful and peaceful place that enhances the neighborhood in alignment with the long-term vision for the area. Okay, great. The chosen 8.1 acre site is well positioned along existing religious buildings. It's true, it's on Church Row, and it's also right next to their existing stake center, which is the tallest building in Fairview right now. So if you hear religious bigotry, they already own the tallest building in Fairview. We cannot be more clear on that. We are committed to not only meeting, but exceeding local standards wherever reasonably possible. Their support from the agreement, I think I left something out here. When the church sought to engage with council members individually to discuss their commitment to this compromise, we were met with refusal. Kevin will look right at the camera. The council members cannot speak to any attorney individually. There are sunshine laws. If you guys are attorneys, you know what that is. They are verboten from meeting one-on-one with any entity. There are rules, regulations. They have to do everything in the open as an elected body. They cannot meet one-on-one with the attorneys, and they've told them that. However, the church continues to say they won't meet with us, and they keep saying we can't. So that's kind of an impasse there. But here they brought it up again. Refusal. While we continue to believe that the town's denial of the current application substantially burdens the practice and expression of religious beliefs for the church, because what they're saying is it needs to be super duper tall in order to worship there. Now, Elder Bednar himself put out a video called No Small Temples, where he said it's not the size that matters. It's what happens inside.
What is this next thing?
Huh? I'm going to read it in just a minute.
Now I'm really confused.
I know. President Nelson also has gone on record saying it's not what the temple looks like outside, it's the inside. There are 11 other temples that have domes or no steeple whatsoever. So to prove that a tall tower is necessary for their religious worship when nothing happens in the tower is going to be very interesting to see how they do that. And of course, that's where the steeple doctrine that brought Nemo to Fairview originated. Okay. Before filling an application for a smaller temple, and this is what happened in mediation, right? Okay. They say we would still be prepared to shoulder the burden and file our application for the smaller temple.
Okay, that's where you got me.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened in mediation?
He's the stake president.
Yeah.
He has no authority to negotiate on behalf of the church.
Yeah. No, I know. No, it's really it's disheartening to me, and it's very disrespectful. These are really awesome, committed members of elected members of town council, and they're being treated this way. So they did intermediation in November, trying to somehow work something out. And the church came back with a smaller temple, 120 feet tall, 35 feet for the walls, and 33 feet footprint. Now, that is considerably smaller than the original 173 feet, but it is still beyond their zoning requirements of the town and their regulations. So in that mediation, they expected assurances from the mayor and town council that this would pass. Okay. You can't really do that in a democratic process. The mayor and the pro tem said, sure, we'll vote for it if it goes through our process. And so the church said, all right, you guys vote on this behind closed doors. The town did it. They voted unanimously. They would pass. They said, you have a public meeting where you talk about the new, smaller temple. The town did it. The church did not show up. 2 lawyers. That was it. The church spoke nothing at all about the temple. And then what the church was supposed to do in response to those 2 things that the town did in good faith was to submit an application, an actual rendering of what the temple would be, with plans for traffic and the grounds and the height. They did not do that because they said they were nervous. They did not have assurances. I feel like they think it's a theocracy and not a democracy. The mayor on Steve Pineker's program and mine looked right at the camera and said, I will vote for the 120-foot temple if it goes through our legal process. He kept saying, I don't know how many more times I can say that. Okay. So before filling an application for a smaller temple, we ask only for assurance that the town would live up to its original obligations during mediation. The only obligations were to, number 1, vote on it as a town council. Behind the scenes, they did that and said they would pass on it if it was brought forward. The other one was to hold an open meeting, which they did, and the residents were not happy. They have no control over that. The town did the 2 things agreed at mediation. The church did nothing agreed at mediation, which was to bring forward a contract. Yeah, sorry, I'm still kind of heated from reading this. We remain concerned, however, that our religious rights could be compromised if the town does not honor its word as agreed to during mediation. Again, it has to go through the normal town processes. I don't know why that isn't stressed. We entered mediation with hopes of a respectful and expedient solution that advanced everyone's goals, and that still remains our hope. It is important to clarify misinformation that may have circulated about this process. It is disheartening to face mischaracterizations of our proposed temple as against the law when it is entirely appropriate under local law and fully protected by both federal and state laws that protect religious rights in the United States of America. This is true. Every building that's going to exceed the normal zoning puts forward a conditional use permit, a CUP, that is run through the normal democratic process of the town, the planning and zoning and the town council. This whole paragraph before where they just want assurances, that doesn't fly when you have to go through the democratic process. And again, they're saying that it is protected. We've had a lot of people in the comments say it's our constitutional right to build whatever we want. That is not true. Interestingly, they are having a series of workshops there in the Fairview area about religious freedom from an attorney who is a religious freedom expert. And the texts I've received say this is to prep the members to be able to discuss this with people who may be in opposition. So that's interesting. There've been a series, 1 and then another one coming up on the 29th. Our intention has always been to collaborate openly at every stage of this process, says a letter from a stake president, and the mayor has never talked to a decision maker in the entire year-long process. Despite our sincere efforts to avoid conflict, we must stand firm against any actions that would impede the rights of members of our church, or any church, to worship freely as protected by the laws of the land. There is a way forward. We respectfully invite the town to reaffirm the commitments it made during the mediation process, which they did. They unanimously voted they would approve the smaller temple, and they held an open public meeting. They did
they
the 2 things.
Reaffirm it. That was just the affirmation.
Yeah, exactly.
Reaffirmation.
The only person that broke the agreement at mediation was the LDS Church because they did not submit an application on January 13th. I feel like I have to look right into the camera and say that. The town has done what was agreed on in mediation. Despite our sincere efforts to avoid conflict, we must stand firm. Okay, read that. There is a way forward. We respectfully invite the town to reaffirm the commitments it made during the mediation process, which previously the town council unanimously voted to support. And if anybody from the LDS Church wants to watch my podcast or Steve Pineker's, the mayor said over and over directly to the camera, I will vote for the 120-foot temple. I will vote for it. Let me be clear. He said it over and over. I don't know how more clear he could have been. But it has to go through the democratic process of the town. It's not a theocracy.
Can I mention this funny line?
Yeah,
Our intention has always been to collaborate openly at every stage of this process, except for all the private meetings we tried to get without you there.
Exactly. Or the fact that they've only talked to low-level attorneys. They have never been able to talk to somebody who's a decision maker.
I still can't understand why the stake president is writing this letter.
It's always a middleman. Remember the first lawsuit that was launched here? It was 2 people in Allen Stake who said it was too far to drive if they didn't build the new temple. They always use someone, who's a member to do, for their own purposes, whatever that is, who knows. Upholding the agreement is an essential reassurance that would make it unnecessary for us to seek judicial assistance to resolve this impasse. Again, they upheld the agreement. They will vote for it. If it makes it through their town's democratic process of planning and zoning and makes it to town council, they will vote for it. And they have said that over and over. A town council can't just give an assurance. A mayor can't say, yeah, I'll pass that. Sure, I'll pass that. That's called a backroom deal. And that's not how it works. It's not how it works.
You do understand that the church is doing exactly what I said was going to happen.
Well, I was
exactly what I predicted.
I didn't want to give you the satisfaction, but yes, RFM, months and months ago, you did call this.
This is exactly what was going to happen. This is what they were going to do when they filed their notice of intent to sue. And if you do this, it'll make it unnecessary for us to seek judicial assistance to resolve this impasse. All you have to do is make a reaffirmation. Now, when you're going with two parties, right? Either both are going to have done something wrong to get to this point, right? Or one has done something wrong to get to this point. And somebody's hands are dirty. Maybe somebody's hands are not dirty and the other one is, but somebody's is. And at some point, if you're going to reach a resolution, you're going to have to allow the party that did something dirty the dignity of having a fig leaf to cover their nakedness.
Yep, you made that call. You absolutely did.
If I were the attorney for the city, that's what I'd be telling them. Yeah, I know it's ridiculous. It's nonsense. It's dumb in so many ways, but that's just, it doesn't cost us anything. Yes, we'll make the reaffirmation. We made it once and we're happy to make it again.
Right. And he did. He said it clearly on my podcast, on Steve's podcast, and also what he said as mayor. He said, I represent everyone in Fairview. I represent the LDS. I represent the residents that are concerned. I have to ask questions. I have to voice concerns. I have to talk as though I represent everyone in Fairview. And that's what those open meetings were about. The church said there was so much negativity there. And I say back to the church, why did you not send some representatives to really talk to the people, to try to make friends, to try to tell them about the temple, what it means? They didn't send anybody. Two lawyers sat there and they took notes on a notepad. And when Mayor Lesnar said, would the LDS Church like to speak here? They said, no. So to me, that is not being a good neighbor, as they always say. All right, almost finished.
If I were the mayor responding to a stake president, I would have my dog catcher write the response.
Again, the mayor's trying to say, please invite me to Salt Lake. He wants to just come to Salt Lake and talk to somebody who's a decision maker, not a next door stake president from Allen, Texas.
That's
not
how
even
far down in the chain of command a stake president is. He's like the dog catcher in the city.
He's so far. So final paragraph here. Thank you for your consideration. We consider ourselves part of the Fairview community and share this information in the spirit of transparency and friendship. We hope to find a mutually acceptable solution that honors Fairview's future and the sacred role of the planned temple on this beautiful site. We hope you will engage with Fairview residents who want this temple and who share a love of both our faith and local community. And I think there is a page that may not have got printed off because they did talk about RLUIPA a lot and how worst comes to worst, they're just going to run this up the chain and take it to court. And they seem so assured, but it is awfully hard to prove what you have to worship. And sometimes the court rules different ways. It's not a hole in one. So I've done an episode with Colby Reddish on this, and it is kind of interesting to look at. So moving forward, we'll see what happens.
It's quite common to act much more, Rebecca, it's quite common for an attorney to act much more assured than they actually feel they are.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I did get a notification that they have yet to see the rendering, the new rendering. At Mediation, they kind of drew something that looked like a penis on a napkin. We all remember that, right? And it wasn't official. It had nothing. You know, a true architectural rendering has to have, you know, the grounds and the lighting and the building and all sewage and all kinds of things like that. There's nothing like that yet. There's just this letter saying, please, once again, play ball, make your citizens get on board, make the planning and zoning pass it, and then it'll all be good. So we'll see. Stay tuned.
It seems to me, you know, when they dealt with Vegas, for instance, they pay money to the politicians, allegedly, and they did pay money to them. What that was for, what that was intended for, who knows? But it sort of feels like the church thinks it sort of can get backroom deals, and it appears as though at times they do. And it seems to me that they sort of thought that would happen here, that behind the scenes, Mayor Lesnar either did or they expected him to, with the rest of the folks there, say like, hey, you know, we're going to have to do the process here. We're going to make it all look right, but we're going to make sure this gets through. We're going to talk to the powers that be, and it's all going to go through smoothly. But But I think maybe the step that was missed was him going, but I'm going to have to portray
Mhm.
to the people I represent that I'm being fair and unbiased, and somehow that missed the mark, and the church is nervous that taking this a step further and then getting burned would actually hurt their case.
The mayor played his part so well that it made the church nervous.
Yeah.
That's right. And you're not wrong, Bill, because in Cody, you have the story of the inside man, right? In Vegas, you have the contributions allegedly influencing things. In Heber, you have an entire county council, one of them even holding a golden shovel at the groundbreaking. The church is used to having things their way. Bakersfield is a temple that is in the same process. We don't hear a lot from them. Now, their city manager is LDS. And I just found out that in September, this is well into the process, he was made the stake president. They're in Bakersfield. So my question is, if this kind of letter needs to go to the town council, will he, as the stake president, write this letter to himself as the town manager? I can't even imagine.
Well, there you have it. This story has not ended. This story has more yet to come. So we'll be here to bring it to you when that does happen. And with that, if you guys are okay, we'll jump into this other story, which is going to take a minute to expound on. This one is crazy. And so RFM, run us through the ghost in the darkness.
Okay, I will. Everybody, this is a pause slide as well as an attention slide. We're going to talk about a criminal case ongoing. It's recently developing down in Utah. And this is one of the most disgusting, sickest set of allegations that I have ever run across in so many ways. So please get any children out of the room. And I mean children up to whatever age you think it is appropriate, because this is really bad stuff. There's not going to be pictures, okay, but it's horrible. And this is like the ghost in the darkness. I'll continue to talk while you get them out of the room. By the way, you may want to absent yourself from the room and come back in 20 minutes and just check and make sure I'm done, okay? So you take care of yourself. We'll go on here. All right. What do you do when two powerful predators join forces to hunt humans? That's what the movie The Ghost and the Darkness asks us back in 1996. Great movie. I won't spoil the plot for you. But something as dangerous and even more grotesque is going on in Utah. Here's the short version. New charges in Box Elder County, northwestmost county in Utah, I believe. In Box Elder County, there is a judge and also the fire chief. They are facing allegations that they shared child pornography, fantasies of molestation with each other, and assorted other things. This is by Spencer Burt. Dateline, Brigham City, Utah. After two public servants in Box Elder County, that's the judge and the fire chief, were charged with offenses involving child sexual abuse, new findings show that the pair had a sexual relationship with one another, shared child pornography, and discussed fantasies of abusing children together. Both men were charged earlier this year. But the way that happened is remarkable. First, Tremonton Fire Chief Ned Brady Hansen was accused of possessing and sharing child porn. Then later, Box Elder County Judge Kevin Robert Christensen was charged with similar offenses. Now, the crazy thing is that they're connected, these two. In a search warrant filed by FBI agents investigating Hansen's case, that's the first one, the fire chief, they said they learned that Hansen was often sharing child porn with other users online and discussing twisted fantasies, which led them to. According to the report, they learned that one of the people Hansen was chatting online with was Christensen, which means that they learned that one of the people the fire chief was chatting online with was the judge. Investigators also learned from the chats that the fire chief and the judge, Hansen and Christensen, had met up in real life and engaged in sexual acts. They also allegedly discussed fantasies of sexually abusing children together. They also discovered that when Hansen was arrested, the fire chief, law enforcement had requested that he be held without bail. But Judge Christensen denied the request and allowed Fire Chief Hansen to be released. The judge was not under suspicion at the time. We'll get into a little bit more detail here in a second. This is the craziest case I have ever heard of. A warrant was issued for Hansen, the fire chief's rearrest after he had posted bail, and he was booked into the Weber County Jail on Tuesday. Christensen, the judge, was booked into Davis County last week. They are both still in custody. So now here's the more detailed version, okay? I'll give you a second if you want to leave. This really starts in November of 2024. The investigation into Chief Ned Brady Hansen began in November when the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received information that an account connected to Chief Hansen had engaged in distributing child sex abuse material. An arrest report said Chief Hansen admitted to possessing the videos related to the tip and subscribing to the application. That's the application they used to share this. Chief Hansen started his career in South Ogden and took a position as assistant chief in Logan in 2000, according to the Logan website. Hansen was the Jackson Hole Fire EMS chief from 2017 to September 2022, when he retired and moved back to Logan. The Jackson Hole News and Guide reported. The fire chief was hired by Tremonton in August 2023. So, recent to Tremonton. Now, January of 2025. On January 27th, Brigham City Police executed a warrant to Fire Chief Hansen's residence. So November was where they got the ping, and that initiated the investigation. Now they're going to make the arrest. Later booked him into the Box Elder County Jail. Several electronic devices were seized by police for processing at the time. When Chief Hansen was initially arrested, investigators asked a judge, who was Judge Christensen, to keep Hansen in custody without the possibility of posting bail. Judge Christensen nevertheless ordered that bail be set, and Fire Chief Hansen posted the bail to obtain release pending trial. So you've got this crazy situation. This is horrible in so many ways. But I cannot even imagine what is going on in a courtroom where, if these allegations are true, and I must stress that, we have a judge who is involved with a fire chief in child sexual abuse and fantasies and videos and everything. The worst stuff you can imagine, I imagine. And now the fire chief gets arrested for it because he got picked up. And now the fire chief is brought in front of the judge who's involved with him in doing this for bail to be set. And law enforcement is asking that he be kept, that no bail be set. And the judge sets bail. I didn't find anything that said how much the bail was, but he set bail. It was met. It was paid off. And the chief was able to get bail. Anyway, I can't even imagine what was going on in that courtroom at that time in the judge's head and what was going on in his head for the month afterward, hoping and praying that the chief had done a good enough job of, like, I don't know, deleting everything related to the judge. But such was not the case. February 2025, while going through Fire Chief Hansen's seized computer and phone, FBI investigators discovered on February 28th that another individual in Box Elder County was using the internet-based chatting application Kik to communicate with others about sexually abusing children, sexually exploiting children, and enticing children, according to charging documents. The individual was later identified as Box Elder County Judge Kevin Robert Christensen, police said. And multiple suspicious chat threads were found on the Kik account. Judge Christensen discussed many personal details about himself and sent multiple photos of him and his family members to other people in those chats, including explicit photos of himself, the charges state. Later, police found Chief Hansen. By the way, I went back into these. These are culled from different sources, but I went in and I put Chief in front of Hansen and Judge in front of Christensen because I kept having trouble remembering who was who, and the names are kind of similar. Later, police found Chief Hansen had an extensive number of chats with Judge Christensen that were graphically sexual and involved discussion of sexually abusing children, according to the arrest affidavit. Charging documents said the judge, Christensen, engaged in disturbing conversations with Tremonton Fire Chief Ned Brady Hansen, 54, about sexually abusing children, and the two men were also involved in a sexual relationship. Charging documents for Judge Christensen said FBI investigators found an account connected to him was being used to communicate with others about sexually abusing children. It cited graphic sexual conversations with girls who told him they were 13 and 16 years old, and said he shared personal details about himself and sent explicit photos on the app. Now, March 2025. This is March 17th, 2025. I think we mentioned that. It's St. Patty's Day, but now we're up current to March of this month. The affidavit states that during chats with users, Judge Christensen made multiple references to having sexually abused relative children, his relatives. Those allegations are under investigation. Because Christensen is a sitting court judge, he is a greater danger to flee to avoid prosecution, the affidavit states. The position of trust he holds in the community and the actions he undertook while in this position significantly undermine the confidence of the community in the legitimacy of the criminal justice system. Yeah, that's where they're arguing for no bail. Christensen was appointed to the Box Elder County Justice Court in May 1996, 30 years ago almost. He served in Box Elder County, Tremonton City, Brigham City, Garland City, and Willard City. By the way, the Justice Court, they just do low-ranking misdemeanors and traffic tickets. That's what goes on there, and that's what he's been a judge of in the county and for these different cities. In one chat on November 2nd of last year, Judge Christensen was talking to a user who said she was 13 years old, and he, quote, directs the conversation towards sexual topics and engages in graphic sexual chats with the child, unquote, a police booking affidavit says. He is also accused of sending an unsolicited graphic photo to her. Continuing to quote, Judge Christensen continues to engage in graphic sexual conversations with the child and states at one point that he has watched child sex abuse materials depicting an adult female sexually abusing a child who is approximately 8 years old, unquote, according to the charges. That's actually a picture, I believe, of the courtroom, or at least a courtroom there at that courthouse. In a separate chat on September 3rd, Judge Christensen is accused of communicating with a user who said she was 16 years old. Police say Judge Christensen and the girl exchanged explicit photos. At no point in the chat does either party suggest that this is a role play or fantasy chat, and the minor female at no point suggests that she is not a minor female, the charges state. In another conversation on August 10th, Judge Christensen was asked what arouses him, and he replied, I love young, the charges allege. This is common slang for child sex abuse material depicting young children, according to the affidavit. There's a picture of the judge. During an interview with police, Judge Christensen admitted to engaging in fantasy chats, the charges state. However, I think that what that means is that he is attributing it to fantasy and not something that he's actually following through on or doing anything with. However, the charges go on. However, when pressed by law enforcement about soliciting child sex abuse material, the defendant, Judge Christensen, gave no alternate explanation other than having solicited and received such material. It's tough when you have material that you're not supposed to have, because you got to explain somehow how it got there, right? Well, I don't have an explanation. I guess it just sort of magically appeared. Somebody sent it to me without my request. That's usually where the defense will be. The article goes on. The judge said that on November 26th, he deleted all evidence of the chats from his devices after learning a suspected co-conspirator of his was discovered distributing child sexual abuse material. The charges say, adding that he stopped using the app with the intent to avoid being discovered or arrested by law enforcement. And there's a picture of the fire chief being sworn in. In other chats, Judge Christensen allegedly made multiple references to sexually abusing other children. In the conversation with the 13-year-old, he said he wanted to make an explicit movie with that young teen and another child he knows, according to the charging documents. Police said allegations involving other children are being investigated. Judge Christensen was charged Monday, March 10th, 2025, with 2 counts of enticing a minor using the internet, 1 second-degree felony and 1 third-degree felony, plus 2 counts of dealing in materials harmful to a minor, 3 counts of attempted aggravated sexual exploitation of a minor, and obstruction of justice, third-degree felonies. And the obstruction would be his admission to deleting things, I imagine. All right. Now, up to this morning, March 17th is this morning. The fire chief, Ned Brady Hansen, age 54, appeared virtually in a Weber County court for his initial appearance after being accused of multiple child sex crimes. That hearing did not last very long because the judge recused himself from the case, citing that he doesn't necessarily have a conflict with the fire chief because he doesn't know the fire chief. But of course, he is aware of the judge. And so it's quite likely that in the future, those 2 defendants will be joined, though they're not now, for trial and have one trial with both of them together, in which case he would not be able to be the judge. So he's just seeing this problem coming and averting it in the bud by recusing himself at this point. Then they set the hearing that was for today over to this coming Thursday in front of Judge Bean, who is also going to be hearing, I believe, the first hearing for Judge Christensen. And I think that covers everything that was in this article. Let me see here. Yes, this judge, really quite remarkable. And here's something that where we find out some other things about this judge. Judge Kevin Christensen, who's accused of child sex crimes, was recommended to be retained 11-0 by the Utah Judicial Evaluation Commission in 2022. He had a lot of people fooled. Christensen was appointed to the Box Elder County Justice Court in May 1996. He worked in private practice before being appointed to the bench according to his bio. He's a graduate of Gonzaga University School of Law, which is in Washington. I believe it's Catholic University. Was awarded the Scott M. Matheson Award for Outstanding Service to Law-Related Education in 2006. And this part was quoted quite a bit from his bio. In addition to his judicial and family duties, Judge Christensen often speaks to various youth and civic groups about the structure and function of the court system, his bio says. And this is not uncommon for judges, especially a justice judge, to go around and talk about the judicial court system to young people. But of course, it assumes a sinister air when we find out this about this particular judge. And if you want to know where his bio is, well, here's where it used to be. It's been taken down from the Utah state courts. We couldn't find your page. When I clicked that link from that article or any other article quoting from his bio, this is where it goes to. And by the way, I'm just going to report this, okay? Everything that we talked about is absolutely horrendous. And this pales in comparison. I bring it up only because I find it of some interest, and I didn't see it in any of the stories that I read. But apparently, well, not apparently, 10 years ago, I think it was in 2013, Judge Christensen, I'm certain it's the same judge, he was censured by the ABA, well, probably by the UBA, and there was a Utah Supreme Court decision on the matter affirming that he be censured for taking more money in salary than he was allowed to by law in his contracts with the cities. So that happened back then. He doesn't have a completely squeaky clean record. So there's lots of worse things that can happen to somebody than a censure. And the amount over was like $7,000 a year or so. And there's the actual Supreme Court opinion on the issue. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. So that's the end of that story. And I got to ask you, what do you think?
I remember back in January when the fire chief was arrested. I remember that. And I remember that there was kind of an uproar when he was let go with no bail. People couldn't understand, how did that happen? Why is he back in the community? Now we know. And I remember at the time, everybody was like, a fire chief is a trusted member of the community. I think back to reading stories to my kids, the little golden books, like they're really old, back from the 40s. And they have things like that. The fireman is your friend. You know what I mean? The fire chief is your friend, and they have the picture. And law enforcement, the policeman is your friend. And I don't particularly remember a book about a judge, but I would think he would be somebody, if something was wrong, a child would run to. Do you know what I mean? That's what you have to look at. How trusted are they? Just inherently, a fire chief and a judge, a child would run to them if there was a problem, probably because their parents said these are trusted individuals. So the fact that this is happening is just abhorrent. I know people have been asking, is it on Floodlight? It is. Yeah. And I was part of a group that tried to look and see who's LDS because we're always curious. The judge is
unless he left the church or got excommunicated in the last few years.
Yeah, exactly. And the fire chief does not appear to be. But, the other thing I thought was interesting, I read an article that said one of the judges that was supposed to recuse themselves, and I have seen people in the chat go, could this be something, that's higher up, that's a chain? Could there be more, if people are recusing themselves? Is it not just these two individuals?
No. First off, my understanding is, and I think only one article addressed this, is that there are groups of judges in different locations, and what the judge who is the presiding judge in this location where he is the judge, which may be just in that county, has already said, okay, no judges, you're all recused. Obviously, you don't have to have a hearing and just recuse yourself. You're all recused. And now they're going, and that's why they've moved them to different counties, I think. But Judge Bean is not recused, and he's going to have both of them in front of him on Thursday for their initial hearings, which will probably involve requests for bail. But the recusal is not because you're in on it. The recusal is because you know the person and you don't want it to look like, if you make a decision, any decision out of 100 decisions, right? 50 are going to go one way, 50 another way, somewhere around there, right? But if you know this person and they're your friends, every decision that you make for them is going to look like it's biased, even if there's an equal number of decisions on the other side. And what if there's an important decision? What if there's a motion to dismiss and you honestly believe that it should be granted? Well, you can't do that. You have to avoid even the appearance of evil when you're a judge. And so that's the smart move.
So the things that come to mind, first off, a few people had questions. And so I just want to sort of make sure that these get addressed. We do, I know we said something, and I was trying to find an image of something, which I'll show you here in a second. But we do know that one of these two is a Latter-day Saint, or at least it was at one time. And we don't know for sure about the second person, correct?
Well, someone just said in the comments that Generally Unquotable, who does really good research, says the other was LDS and they were even in the same ward together. So I and my team did not find that to share with Floodlight. So that is possible. We'll have to look into that some more.
I hope
at some point these cats got to get together.
True.
Yeah. And maybe their own teaching companion. I mean,
and even though the judge has been the judge since 1996, the fire chief has only been up here since August of 2023.
Yeah. So somebody
could know each other beyond that or in other ways, but
yeah,
if it's in person.
That was somebody's question. My question is, did the judge know this guy was his online friend? Well, they were having a sexual relationship. So that's a hard yes. And then RFM, can you explain at a high level how this guy became a judge? Was he elected or appointed?
Appointed.
Okay.
He's appointed. So what the deal is that he's got these different cities. There's different municipal courts. These aren't huge cities out there in Box, Cedar County, right? Brigham City's the county seat. So you have these other small towns like Tremont, and they each have their own municipal courts to handle misdemeanors and traffic infractions that happen within their city boundaries. And they have a court, and they have to have a judge. So these judges, these little towns, they don't need a full-time judge. They need a judge to come in maybe once a week, maybe twice a month, handle the occasional trial. And so it is a part-time contract. Well, so this judge has several part-time contracts with several different cities, and he's also the district or the justice court judge in for the county as well. Anyway, that's how it ended up. He ended up getting paid all these different salaries, which were over the total amount of salary he was allowed by law to take, and that's where he got in trouble with the bar association.
Yeah, and then the other thing I just want to throw in here, and I just want to note, from year to year, data and statistics can be very different. Because I'm interested in Mormonism, and the three of us, along with other folks in this arena, we get to comment and think about and look into Mormonism, and I've been doing so for over a decade at this point. I've been following child abuse and abuse in general statistics in Utah. And some years, Utah's first. Some years, Utah's in the middle, but Utah's never in the lower half of statistics. So I'll put a couple of things up on the screen. I don't know what year this is. Oh, actually, it says 2025. So this is ranking the states with the most sex offenses. So this is just sex offenses in general. You'll notice Utah is second. Now, this isn't second in number. This is second in statistics, number per 100,000 instances, for instance. So Utah is second with 5,290 cases. That's 159 sex offenses per 100,000. Then I'll just note this one here. This, again, I don't know what year this is, but this is a year in which Utah fell somewhere in the middle. They actually come up to be 21st. Utah's 21st in child sex abuse cases. And then in this instance, this was CBS Channel 2 in Utah reporting 6,900 cases, 27%, so a little over 1 in 4. Of course, we all know that abuse with children is often underreported. It was the highest that year. And I just want to note, for a church that has such influence on the state, where half the people are Mormon, if the gospel had the effect that we say it does, we should expect to find, I think, a lower number of cases in Utah than other states. And what we actually find is that Utah, in its best years, is in the middle, in the higher part of the middle. And in its worst years, it's number 1, 2, or 3. And I just want that to sit for a second, that Utah is doing something. Something affects Utah in a way that it's always in the higher half of child abuse and sex abuse cases. Year after year after year, and many years, it is number 1, 2, or 3 on the list, and why that might be.
I wish President Nelson, and amongst all the revelations he's getting, would get one to promote a mission on his part and light a fire under him to extirpate every child sex offender from the membership of the church.
Discernment should allow one to do that. If one truly had the Holy Ghost, one should be able to, as prophet, seer, and revelator, expel the members of the community who have the propensity to do that. It's sort of like the movie Minority Report, right? Where they would figure out who's going to commit the crimes before they commit them. But I guess that's not how agency works.
The Middle Spiders, that one, Tom Cruise in The Middle Spiders.
Yeah.
Yes, and regardless, protect the children.
Yeah.
Yeah. But instead, they're excommunicating people who follow Jesus, but not the prophet, and who give money to charity. That's the chosen recipient of excommunication.
That line is very important, and I'm not sure if you said it when we were live. I know you said it before we went live. Can you repeat that again and where you got it from about following Jesus and not the prophet?
Yeah, just again back to Latter-day Struggles, where the stake president did stress that they followed Jesus, but not so much the prophet that they could see, right? And that's just whole podcast on that topic, I think, right there. And then again, giving to charities instead of to the church.
This is where they said too much. They said the quiet part out loud. And if you already said it before and we were going, then good, because it deserves reemphasis.
That's right.
But if not, then I wanted to make sure that it got said, because that's incredible. Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, and I'll just finish saying, you started off this story by saying this is the worst story you'd ever heard of. And I thought, that's just rhetoric. I've heard you say that sort of before in terms of being one of the worst cases. This seems to me to be the worst case I've ever heard of two adults getting together, deeply unhealthy. It was just one of them, and two of them getting together and perpetuating sort of this idea of sex abuse among the two of them and carrying it out, at least in their heads, about extending that further into even their own families. That horrific.
What do we do with our trust in the institutions of our society?
Yeah, you and I were talking before the show tonight. Who do you, if you polled people in the community, who are the people you trust the most? In the top 5 for sure, and maybe the top 2, judge and fireman. Those are the 2 people that you go, I can trust those 2 people. If I got to find a person in my community based on their occupation who I can go to and trust that they will handle, judge and fireman. And here, the 2 of them together, allegedly, if this turns out to be true, quite gross.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the key, the 2 of them together. Typically, you would expect between a judge and a fireman, there might be someone who would turn the other one in, that would say, this is completely unacceptable. We're not doing this. I'm horrified by your behavior. That did not happen. These are 2 adults making plans together, egging each other on, both on board with what the other one is doing. 2, there is no check and balance there. Nobody is telling anybody there's anything wrong with that. And that's what's really terrifying.
To a position of prominence within their fields. And this is public service. These are the guys you're supposed to be able to trust.
Yeah.
But like I said, everybody, and I'll say it again, trust no one.
I know without a doubt that I can turn it over to Rebecca and know that it only goes up from here in terms of the morality of a story. So
Hopefully.
Rebecca, please, let's use your story to wash ourselves clean.
Yeah, although I do have to laugh because RFM quickly put up this slide of my first story here about Benson Boone, and there was some concern in the chat. Somebody was saying, what was that? That was, somebody quickly clicked away from that. Yes, this is world pop star Benson Boone, and this picture is from Rolling Stone magazine, a reputable periodical. There is nothing wrong here. I think it looks a lot like Burt Reynolds. Remember that picture, RFM, back in the day, the Burt Reynolds pose? Yeah, from Cosmo, the whole center field where he was laying
back
on
when
the
he was
turf.
together with Dinah Shore.
Yep, with Dinah Shore. That boy, all the details. Anyway, I think this is kind of a throwback to this. And this young man is 22 years old. This is Benson Boone, and you can probably guess from his first name, he is LDS, and I'm guessing probably maybe named after President Benson. I know people do that. He is confirmed, and this is a Rolling Stone article. He's no longer Mormon. And he spoke about his political beliefs. He said, there was a period of time when I really wanted to like coffee. So I guess that says to me, he's trying to be normal. But you may know his song, Beautiful Things. It was the most downloaded song in the world last year. I'm not going to play it because we'll get a strike. But if you want to Google it, you'll recognize it right away. Everybody uses it on their TikToks. Everybody uses it for everything to underscore it. So these are just he's so retro looking. The pictures I think are really, really interesting. It says, and this is from some different articles kind of put together, but he was in Rolling Stone. You're likely at least somewhat familiar with Benson Boone at this point, the crotch grabbing, back flipping, no shirt wearing 22-year-old singer-songwriter. Hell, his song Beautiful Things was the top selling single in the world last year. What you might be less familiar with is the fact that Benson was raised in rural Monroe, Washington. This is a very small area. This is kind of, I was raised in Washington State too, in a devout Mormon family. He even briefly attended Brigham Young University, which you might recognize from the viral TikToks where BYU students were asked about soaking, coffee, and so on. So yeah, they're trying to familiarize their audience with people at BYU. I saw a recent TikTok from BYU where they asked, it might even been UVU, they asked garment-wearing students, would you rather take your garment off or commit a crime? Can you guess what they said? Yeah, they said we'd rather commit a crime. Yeah, it seems like the message might be lost a little bit on them in that. But anyway, interesting. Let's see. Did I do that? Okay, next slide.
It's kind of chilling when you think about it.
Yeah, no, it is very chilling. That's what I'm saying. Sleeper cell.
What happens when legalism and checking boxes trumps real righteous choices of ethics and morality? Yep.
Yeah, well, ethical choices. How many LDS people, again, to go back to the temple, stood up and said, I have always known that the steeple was the most important part of the temple. I have always known that I couldn't worship unless it was a tall steeple. A lot of them stood up and said that, right? That's not a crime, but it might be a little lapse of ethics because we all know that's not true. All right, let's go on. In a new profile with Rolling Stone, there he is on the cover. He said he no longer identifies as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is actually a huge deal. Like, this is one of the top pop stars in the entire world. He started out on American Idol and he kind of made it into the top 24 and then bowed out, said, this is not going to help my career. He went on from there. He was, took the Grammys by storm a couple weeks ago. He's huge. And here he is talking about Mormonism. He explained, I don't want to be a part of one religion. I have my own opinions. Some are from this religion. Some are from this religion. Some are from no religion at all. So he just wants to think for himself. There he is. It says, growing up, and keep in mind, this is in Rolling Stone for everybody to read. Growing up, a lot of people at church would talk about these experiences they've had and these personal revelations and feelings and voices. I never felt it as physically present as they did. And so I was always confused and frustrated. I share his experience in that. I never knew what people were doing when they were sobbing into the microphone at the pulpit bearing a testimony. And it was really awkward for me. So I'm with you, Benson, on that one. I was always scared to bring it up to people because I just didn't want to accept that, like, I wasn't feeling what everybody else was feeling, right? Everyone says, don't you feel it? Feel it? That warm spirit? Yeah, I feel it. And he finally just stepped away. He says, my parents definitely have their own views, and his parents are active LDS. But when it comes to religion and God, they want me to figure it out on my own, he continued. And whatever I come to and whatever I feel right, that is what they want for me. So that is the parent of the 21st century. The parent of the 20th century that a lot of us grew up with would disown you for saying something like that. But his parents are like, you know what? You do you, Benson, and we'll work it all out. So like I said,
I'm not going to disown my kid over religion if he's making millions. What are you, crazy?
There is that factor. You're like, whatever you want, Benson. Yeah, you're great. So look at that blue jumpsuit. He's just so retro looking. It's just really fun. So he was not the only kind of pop star to talk out this week. I just think this is kind of damaging for those that are paying attention. We have David Archuleta again, who's been very vocal about things. He did an interview with Culture Fix. I would encourage everybody to go look it up. It's not very long. He had some extremely strong words for his time in the LDS Church. He talked about being, LGBTQ and the harm. And he even said it was a mind F. I'm not going to say the whole word so we get unmonetized, but he was very strong and seems to be getting more and more strong as he comes out and talks about his experiences. So I don't know, very quickly, what you guys think. Top stars, world pop stars, all coming out and saying that was not a healthy place for me and I've moved on.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to Tyler Glenn and
Ryan Gosling.
Yep.
Well, yeah, the actors as well, actors and actresses as well. Dan Reynolds, Imagine Dragons, I think we mentioned, but it seems like high demand religion puts a lot of pressure. That's the whole reason it's called that. And that it also maybe creates sort of the artists who do music, who express themselves in very creative ways that the rest of us don't have access to. Often it's trauma and the stuff that happened to them that sort of opens up the window to that. So,
back in the 70s, we had some Mormon celebrities that we always pointed at in order to make ourselves feel better, but it doesn't seem like they kept blowing up and leaving the church all over the place. I mean, you got the Osmonds.
Yeah.
I mean, they're famous.
Yep. They're solid.
They're together.
Solid. Yep.
Right? Throughout. Merlin Olsen.
Yep.
Steve Martin.
Yeah. I started that rumor. Remember, I told you that I'm the one that started that rumor in the mid 80s.
I bet you did.
I did. I worked at BYU, and there was a woman there who also worked with me at BYU, and she came running in with a letter, hard copy. She goes, my daughter on her mission, they tracked it out, Steve Martin, and I think he's going to join the church. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess I've been kind of doing the same thing back then that I do now. I mean, there wasn't Facebook, but I definitely told everyone I knew, I think Steve Martin is going to join the church. And then the next letter, the woman came ringing in. She goes, oh, my daughter said it is someone named, Steve Martin, but it's not the Steve Martin. And like the church always says, remember those ads? When you gossip, like a feather in the wind. I was never able to collect that rumor. So I take public responsibility here tonight for that rumor about Steve
It's too
Martin.
bad, because it would have been a wild and crazy baptism.
It would have.
Yes, but we used to think that Steve Martin was a member of the church, but they flare out today. They flare out so quickly, it seems, and they didn't back then.
Yep.
Is that representative of the general membership?
And the internet.
I'm thinking it might be.
Honestly, and cell phones for sure.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. The next story is mine. It'll be a really short one, folks. Just to note, the new book from the Young Women's Organization. So this was put out by the Church Historians Press. The book is titled Carry On, the Latter-day Saint Young Women Organization, 1870 to 2024. The new book on the history of the Young Women's Organization. And this was sort of brought to our attention in the last week. The Salt Lake Tribune and Deseret News both ran articles. The Church of Jesus Christ celebrates Women's History Month with book release on Young Women Organization. So there's that. The thing on the Church Historians Press to talk about this book, it said Carry On traces the growth of young women, originally called the Young Ladies Department of the Ladies Cooperation Retrenchment Association. Man, that's a mouthful, kind of like the church's full name, huh? From a small group of Brigham Young's daughters into today's global organization, drawing on the church's history library's wealth of correspondence, minutes, oral histories, and other records. The book chronicles the organization's commitment to its religious mission over 150 years of social change. Readers will follow celebrated leaders like Ruth Mae Fox, Ardith G. Kapp, Emily Bell Freeman, and they shape familiar programs including Beehive Girls, Personal Progress, and Young Women's Camp to engage young women in an increasingly global church. Personal stories from the individual young women complement the institutional narrative, allowing the organization's influence in the lives of Latter-day Saint women throughout its history. Carry On is a landmark publication for the Church History Department, says Lisa Olson Tate, one of the book's authors and the department's managing historian for women's history. Quote, it provides a new perspective on church history through lenses such as generational dynamics, female leadership, institutional development, and cultural change, joining the department's growing body of work on the Relief Society and the diaries and sermons of women over time. Carry On deepens and extends our commitment to women's history. And then I'll just note a couple of quotes from the news article. Quote, it's a history of women's organization run by women, run for women. And I think that's a strange quote, only because we all know in Mormonism, there's no woman at the top of any organization. And so there's the busy work, and then there's the decision makers. And at the end of the day, the decision makers are always male in the LDS Church, unless your name is Sherry Dew for Deseret Book. But even her, if the brethren needed something done, she would need to cave into that. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been there that long.
Oh, and I think she has on multiple occasions done just that.
It says we can't claim that it's a thorough account of young women's experiences themselves, but it does contain many wonderful examples that illustrate girls' experiences in the context of larger themes. Lisa Olson Tate, a church historian and one of the book's authors, we mentioned her on the last slide. And then this is Elder Hugo E. Martinez. He's a general authority 70, an assistant executive director of the Church History Department.
Oh, he's the guy that lady on the slide before works under.
Yeah, he's the one who's in charge.
Okay.
Sort of, because then he reports to the brethren. But he says, quote, it's a historical narrative of key events that cycle back and forth, how they were handled throughout, mingled with personal stories, which is how the Lord would have us teach the history of the restored church. Yes, the Lord is definitely particular about how we teach church history, and that usually involves not telling the problematic aspects and keeping those as far away from the members as possible. That's my words, not his, Elder Hugo Martinez.
God is a big fan of reading books where key events cycle back and forth, I hear.
Yeah. And then I'll just note they were making reference that the book was $34.99. I think actually $38.99 if you bought it through the church. $34.99 on Amazon. Right now there's a 10% discount if you'd like to buy the book Carry On, the Latter-day Saint Women Organization 1870 to 2024. And I have me personally, I have nothing negative to say about women or females' history. I do, though, as a former Mormon, as a former Latter-day Saint, I struggle to see how anybody in the church that is a patriarchy will sense any importance in this book. And I actually would be quite surprised if they sell 300 copies. Because I don't expect that members of the church, the way it's ingrained in us to respect male authority, will see the value in reading the story of the young women's organization. So we'll see.
Yeah,
But
I would agree with that. And it's funny because when I saw the advertisement for this book, which was all over social media, there were two other Instagram reels that were kind of circulating about the same time. And to your point, Bill, one was the worldwide Relief Society broadcast that was Sunday night. And it said with Elder, is it Dale Runland, gave his full title, first name, initial, and the General Relief Society Board, right? Like the women don't even get their name. Yeah, the women don't even get their name listed at all. And I've told this story before. One of the very last times I ever went to church, they said, we're going to have a women's chat in Relief Society. The chairs are in a circle. We're going to go in there and we're just going to really talk about the real things for women. Usually I hate that kind of thing, but I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm going to go in. So I go in there and there's someone from the High Council sitting there. And the Relief Society president goes, and this will be, under the direction of so-and-so, and he'll be leading the questions. So we all sit there and he's like, he felt so awkward. He's like, so ladies, how's it going as ladies? It's just ridiculous. So, and then the other reel that I saw was Emily Bell Freeman, the General Young Women's president. And this was a Fair Mormon video that they had taken her reel and made into a Fair Mormon. And she was talking about how in 2019, do you remember what the younger girls, the middle-aged girls and the older girls were called in the church?
Yes.
Our family, what were they?
Emily Bell Freeman, is this the video where she's, I don't know, she's revealing the spring fashion line?
Yes. Anyway, do you remember the names of those? I'm trying to steer you away from that. Yeah.
Well, they're beehives.
Yes.
And on the bottom, laurels on the top. And then in the middle were Maya maids?
Yeah. The feather dusting Maya maids. Yeah. So, 6 years ago, they did away with those names. And this reel was all about how worldwide girls are always asking them, who are we? What's our identity? What are we? Because right now, as I understand, they're just, 11 to 13-year-olds. They're just go by age. They don't have a name. So she talked about how, we understand the girls want us to find something. We want to find something that's international. It's really important that we give them an identity. But how important is it? It's been 6 years. That really struck me.
So they're all just young women of different ages.
Just young women of different ages. I went through the beehive Maya maid Laurel, and that's what we were. It might have sounded weird to others outside, but we sure knew what we were.
It did, and continues to. By the way, you know why they got rid of those names in the first place?
Well, internationally, they didn't translate very well.
Well, also the church was concerned because there were too many bishops resting on their laurels.
Oh, gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. We'll have to cut that. Make a timestamp, Bill.
I'll just note one of the last times the church attempted to put a book out on women. Remember this one? Let me take that off. Actually, this here. Remember this book?
Yes. I do.
Book on women.
I didn't get it.
All male authors.
I didn't buy it. I bought every other book that was putting out, but I'm not going to buy a book about women because who cares?
This is how a religious system treasures patriarchy. Is a book is written on women and only men have anything to say about it.
That really is hysterical. By the way, everybody, I was representing how I felt back in the 1980s when this book was published. I think it was the latter part of the 80s.
Yeah.
They had one that was like Testimony, and then they had all the names or Faith, and Testimony I thought was maybe the first one, but Woman, all men. Men will tell you in the church everything you need to know about women.
Yep. And we've seen that reaffirmed in, the list of what callings are needed to run a ward. Everything is a male calling. There are no female callings needed to run a ward, right? No female decision maker that does not have to check in with a man. So I don't know if that's lost on everybody, but that is how it stands, no matter how they dress it up.
Yeah. Do you think G. Homer ever had fun made of his name? By the other kids in school.
Depends on what the first name was.
No, just the initial. G. Homer.
G. Homer. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All the time. Yep. You would have been right in there. I can tell.
It's got Boyd Packer. He was from Brigham City.
Yeah. Rex Pinniger. Yeah. He was a mission president for my era. Interesting. Well, now I'm really curious. You can find this at DI. I'm curious to see what these what these, I know what Mark E. Peterson has to say about women, that he's been married for 43 years and has never seen his wife unclothed.
Well, that's a secret to a long marriage, I hear.
In some cases, it's best.
And then I'll just lastly say, again, book sales, I would imagine something like, let's say Terrell Given's The Crucible of Doubt.
Yes.
I bet that sold, not that it sold a ton of copies. I've spoken to LDS bookstores, and the prophets books are put up at the front. But the books that are about history or about sort of the issues in Mormonism tend to sell actually very little. It's really hard to sell a Mormon book. And I don't imagine Crucible of Doubt sold anything that was sort of a high number of copies, but I bet it sold 50 times more than this book, Carry On, will sell. It seems like I'll be really interested to see how Mormons and Latter-day Saints specifically respond to that kind of book.
I will too. By the way, I see Alice has joined us. Can you bring Alice to the camera
No,
to
you
say
know, if I
hi
touch her, she growls.
to our
Alice,
audience?
Alice, do you want to see
Alice.
the camera? There you are. Alice. She's named
Hi,
for Alice in
sweetie.
Wonderland because she's
Hi,
blonde.
Alice. Everybody say hi, Alice.
Oh, kiss on the lips.
Oh,
Who trained you? But I was going to say this, just last comment on this
No
story
time.
is that it kind of goes back to the women, in my meme that I made a little short about it, women in the Salem witch trials. These are women, right, who are trying to have voices, trying to write books, trying to speak, I would say predominantly probably to other women, and they are being silenced completely within the LDS Church. So, and that's not by mistake. I think that's by design.
Well, here at the newscast, we really appreciate it when women speak. And so I'd like to have you go into the next story, which is yours, I believe, Rebecca.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm super bossy on the newscast. In case anybody wonders, I'm the one behind. Yeah, look, they're both like,
nobody's wondering, Rebecca.
Nobody's wondering. Thank you, RFM. I appreciate that. Okay. So these last two quick stories are just things that I kind of came across. They were not in any kind of, article or online anywhere. These are just weird things that happen. So the first one is about BYU. So a couple days ago, a friend of mine in California sent me this text. He said, this is a gentleman who's almost 70. He helps us run the Good Book Club. Wonderful friend. I've been friends with him for 5 years. He said, I just got the weirdest text message on my phone. It says, hello, and that is his name. That's important. They actually named him by name, and his name was linked to his phone number. Yes, his first name. Congratulations on getting into BYU. And there's a little, horn and some confetti. Again, I said my friend is almost 70 years old. Not that someone who's 70 can't go to BYU. I am your peer mentor. New participants with the Office of First Year Experience, which again sounds like something from Harry Potter. You can expect helpful texts from me to help you prepare to attend the university. Is this the best number to text you at? Please respond only yes or no. Okay, so he sends me that first. And at first I think, it's just, but I was very, it's not like those toll roads, phishing scams that we're all getting. This has his name and his phone number, which he doesn't really give out. So that was kind of interesting. Then he texted me back a couple hours later and he said, now I got the following message after the first one. It says, from the BYU Enrollment Services, due to an error with a new software system used by BYU's Office of First Year Experience, you may have received erroneous text messages today. We regret the error and sincerely apologize for any confusion this may have caused. So he thought that was funny. He's quite a character, so he decided to write them back, not just hit yes or no. He said, I got your message about the error. No problem. Interesting on sending this particular message to me. Here is my info. I'm 68 years old. I last graduated from BYU in 1983. I stopped attending church in 1978 following my mission to Chile. So he was out while he was at BYU, but I still attended and graduated from BYU. I never gave the church my cell phone number or an email address. I stopped having contact with the church before either cell phones or email were invented. I formally resigned my membership January 1st, 2016. I am a gay man living in Pasadena, California. So that is my friend. So I thought that was interesting. So I posted that and I saw a couple other people started making these threads about this. And it is happening not just to my friend, but to others. It was really interesting. A lot of people said, oh, I'm pretty sure this must be a phishing scam. And I still thought, no, because it's got a specific name tied to a phone number that has not been used. Like he said, he was not a part of BYU when there was cell phones or emails. So all kinds of different people chimed in. Somebody said, my girlfriend's a Nevermo and she got it. Somebody said, I never went to BYU. Somebody said, I applied to BYU, but never made it. Somebody said, my son is waiting to hear if he got in and he thought he got in. That was one of the saddest ones. So a whole range of different people, active LDS, post-Mormons, one that said they were a never Mormon, was getting this text. So I kept thinking, how in the world did this happen? So this is for you, RFM, this picture. You know, I like to sleuth the secret of the BYU text, right? So I decided on a Saturday to call the office. And that was the next day, because I thought if I call on Friday, I'll get a person. But if I call on Saturday, I bet they have, if it's real. Because I had a lot of people telling me that's a scam. You're falling for a scam. I said, I don't think so. If it's real, there's going to be a message. And this is exactly what happened. So I made this post. I said, I called BYU's office a first-year experience. There is a recorded message letting everyone know that they are aware of the erroneous text messages sent out to the wrong contact list. And are working to correct the situation. Their instructions were to just reply no to the text to be taken off the list. My question is, what is this random list of so many people are on? Former BYU grads, never BYU grads, never Mormons, ex-Mormons, such a variety to the list.
I've been listening closely. The thing I don't get, even with transfers of information from old, systems to new systems and electronic systems at BYU, why do they have this guy's cell phone number?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He never set foot on campus again from 1978. Right. I know people have suggested, family members gave the contact, and that could be true. But why this variety on this list? What is this list? Such a variety.
What you would be assuming is that family members are giving them for purpose of creating this list of people.
Donors, maybe? Donors, as President Holland likes to say, donor.
Well, I don't know. Has this person gotten donation requests from the university?
No, he hasn't heard anything. And that's why it was so confusing to him. So anyway, I just threw it out there to see, did anybody in our chat, anybody listening get a text like that? Because it's definitely from BYU and it's definitely from that office. And they said in the message, it came from the wrong list. So if you're on the wrong list, I don't know what that is.
You know what I like? I like how you went to so much effort to make this cover look like the secret of the BYU text. I think that's very creative.
I love Nancy Drew so much. I read nothing but Nancy Drew for like the first, 8 years of my life. So
what is the real thing? It's something clock.
The old clock.
The old clock.
It was the very first one. Yeah. And I got for Christmas my mom's old set from the 30s. It was wrapped like this.
Oh my gosh. Are those first editions?
Christmas morning. I think they actually are. Unwrapped it. I was in heaven. I couldn't open another present. I was just in heaven. So anyway, okay. So any other comments on that? And we'll move to the last little weird thing that I came across. And then I think we're done.
Okay. I was going to ask Bill because I'm still perplexed about why they have, I get why they would have his name. He went to BYU, but why did they have his cell phone
never
number?
went to BYU.
Yeah, you got
people never did.
You got Mormons, non-Mormons, attendees to BYU, non-attendees to BYU. That list, whatever created that list, there's a question there that needs to be answered.
This is the naughty list.
That is what I think. Yeah. And I forgot to tape that message. I have people online that go, where's the evidence? So probably if you call today, it'll say something different. But I'm going on record that on Saturday, it said the wrong list. So I probably should have recorded it, but I didn't. So. All right. One last very
I believe you,
story.
Rebecca. And that is evidence, by the way, your testimony.
My testimony and how fervently I bore it that I did.
No, not how fervently.
Oh, really? Really? I felt like I was being very fervent.
Well, you said you heard it firsthand. So it's
I did hear it firsthand. And I called twice to make sure I heard it right. And I kind of transcribed it as I was listening. So yeah, obviously I didn't have a lot to do on Saturday while I was at work. All right. Okay. So this is our last story. And it's so interesting. I came across a faithful podcast. Somebody sent it to me where a temple worker had given the host of this faithful podcast a kind of a verbatim letter. He says that in their meeting, I guess temple workers all meet in the morning before the day, right? Their work meeting, that a letter from the first presidency was read by the temple president to the group. And this is kind of a little paraphrase of it. This is the gentleman who gave it to the faithful podcaster, said, this was the temple president last night reading, I guess it was a nighttime meeting, reading the letter from the first presidency. I too had not heard anything outside of the presidency and the coordinator who was working on scheduling. So whatever's in the letter, somebody there in their temple, the coordinator is involved to make some changes. Friday nights are our normal night for service, and they are trying to find out ahead of time who will be able and willing to work through to Saturday morning. Are you starting to guess what this is? He also stated that there have yet to be more letters to stakes and temple presidents. So what this person is claiming the letter said is that on April 18th, which is a Friday, and it's Good Friday, he claims this letter told them that the temple will be open all night long into the next day and close at the normal time on Saturday, which is really interesting to me. I posted this and I got a lot of comments back from people saying, oh, we did this once in our stake, or we did this. But in this case, it said that every temple, this will be every temple.
Oh,
that's what's unique. So I kind of predict if this is accurate. And again, I don't know, it's a person who's on a Faithful podcast saying that they heard this. And of course, the Faithful podcast is talking about the prophecy that temples will be open 24/7. Do you guys remember that as we get closer to the millennium, right?
that was in the millennium. That's
I
in
think
the millennium.
We could already be in the millennium. People, that's another school of thought too, that it's already here and we just don't know because we're not meant to know. So, but I think
Wendy's idea, it's already happened.
That's what I'm talking about.
Learned?
Yeah. So I think it might be sort of a Good Friday stunt. I feel like I can see them announcing this at conference if this is a real thing and saying we're going to be staying open.
Yeah.
But again, so many problems, like elderly people driving at night to get there, elderly people in the temple. How do husbands and wives leave their kids? Would it be a young woman activity to go sleep over at someone's house? And see, my dogs disagree too. Anyway, I don't know. It was interesting and we'll just keep an eye on it. Any thoughts about what he's calling night temple?
It's going to be a pillow party at the temple.
That's what I'm thinking.
Somebody's noting they can't stay awake as it is. So if you've ever been in an endowment session, half the room is sleeping. So
this is Mormonism's version of how to take care of a problem. That stuff that people really, really hate. Well, let's give them more of it.
Yeah, that's true. I think they're just trying to do something really, really special because as we reported on a couple of weeks ago, Holy Week is now something they're encouraging the members to celebrate. Yes. Good Friday, Palm Sunday. And really, we don't know how to do it. We really have no idea. If you're somebody my age or older, you were kept away from that. Like you were not allowed to participate in those activities, even with friends. You weren't allowed to really know about that. And I keep thinking about, the husband and wife that get a babysitter, go to the temple all night. And then what happens on the Saturday before Easter at 7 a.m.? At least it did in my house for 20 years. Easter egg hunt in your yard. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen Saturday before Easter, right? With little kids. It just seems like it's a really interesting proposition. But again, I don't know. We'll just have to see if it's something that comes out later.
I will tell you that back in the early 1980s, when I'm back from my mission, but before I get married the first time, they had finished a temple up there in Dallas. And that is like 3 hours from Austin, where I'm going to school at UT. I believe it was 3 hours one way. And this friend of mine, who's very righteous, wanted to go to the temple on a Saturday and get up there really early so we could do all these sessions all day long and then come back at night. And I signed on for that. And that was one of the worst days ever. Oh my gosh. I didn't get to sleep Friday night before. And he's driving, thank goodness. But I mean, this is really bad. And what made it even worse, the only thing that made it worse is that my friend, very righteous guy, every time we got in the endowment, every single freaking time, to the part where Satan is saying something, I can't remember what the quip is. If I thought about it, maybe I could remember it. The point is not the quip. The point is that my friend would laugh out loud in the endowment session, like this was the first time he ever heard that line, and that it was really, really funny. And neither of those were true.
Was it that nervous Mormon laughter kind of?
No.
It was belly laugh.
It was loud. Yeah, he wanted everybody to know he's into this movie and he appreciates the humor involved. Great writing in the endowment film.
All right.
He got an Academy Award nomination back around 1450.
Okay. All right. All right. So I want to say thank you to both of you for the stories you guys brought to the news show tonight. We are going to finish up here at about an hour and a half. So we did great tonight. Just want to know what is on the radar with the two of you. Let's start with Rebecca, because Mormonish is tomorrow night normally. What do you got?
That's true. It's always on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. We have I always say it's a very interesting episode. To me, they're very interesting to tape. And this is a lawyer, a trial lawyer, who represents missionaries who have had experiences with physical and emotional abuse on their missions. And so he is going to go through the kinds of things that he is seeing, whether he's actually representing them or he's in the courtroom or part of it, the kinds of things that he's seeing that are happening to missionaries, and then to try, that got us a little down, those of us that have missionaries, and then to try to put a positive spin on it, what we can do just as friends, family, parents, to help the missionaries understand that they have autonomy. He said that was one of the main problems, especially in court, where a 20-year-old says, I couldn't leave. They wouldn't let me go to the ER. And somebody might say, you're 20, go to the ER. They don't, it's very hard to prove that kind of a thing. So he said autonomy is really important. And it was a very interesting conversation. That'll be Tuesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
On Wednesday on Mormonism Live, we're going to have special guest stars, Nathan Opfel, who is a film producer and filmmaker, and he has put together a documentary, a multi-part documentary, which right now he is selling. And believe me, people are interested. There's a bidding war going on right now for this. And hopefully this documentary will show up later this year. It's titled The Religion Business. And he's going to talk about the ways that, especially Christian religions in the United States, I think is where the focus is, how they take advantage of tax laws in order to make a whole lot of money that other people can't make who are doing the same thing, only they're not claiming to be a religion while they're doing it. And he's been arrested before off church property. So I guess Mike Norton will have something in common with this guy. Yeah, he's been arrested before. He's had guns waved in his face. When he said that, I said, well, that must have been in a Texas church. And he said, yeah, that's Texas, waving guns in your face at church. It's going to be exciting. Also, Randall Bell is going to be on, and he's going to be talking about his new book. He just completed the manuscript on it, on a similar subject. Not exactly identical, but similar, called Monetizing Jesus. So all that's going to be on Mormonism Live Wednesday at 6:20 p.m. Mountain Time.
Excellent. And then just a note, first I want to just say this was the thumbnail for tonight's show. Neither one of you knew the person on the right. Now the two there were the judge and the fire chief. I'm just curious for the audience, how many of you know that person on the right and why that made sense on this thumbnail?
If I did know him, it would be Doug Llewellyn, and that's not Doug Llewellyn.
It's not Doug Llewellyn.
I thought it was Chuck Woolery.
Oh, that's close. Yeah.
There you go. So I'll just note, folks, if you want to name that. But then also I'll just share one other thing, which is this Saturday at 2 p.m. Now, normally you, Radio Free Mormon, have an episode usually that airs around 7 p.m. that night. You might, and I think probably will still do that. But Saturday at 2 p.m., I'm going to host a watch party. I'll sit here and watch it with you. This is this has taken me probably about 100 hours of time to put together. I don't know if it's any good or not, but I'm proud of it. And it is not particular to any religion, but it goes through lots of different religions, and it shows the mechanisms by which religion gets you to believe, and also the things it does that are hard to see when you're living within the religion, to notice that it's not healthy. And so 2 p.m., there'll be a watch party for this episode on the Mormon Discussion channel. You can see more information about this on Facebook or any other place that we're posting on social media. And so 2 p.m. Mountain Time, I hope that folks will join us to watch this. It's only just over an hour long. I think it's an hour and 6 minutes long. And I'll be there to comment with you. And I hope that folks will check it out.
I'll be there. I love this graphic, Bill.
Yeah, this is the one that I showed maybe 45 seconds or so of several weeks ago on Mormonism After Dark.
Right.
And folks in the comments wanted to be able to know where the full video was. Well, I finally got it finished. And so Saturday at 2 p.m. Otherwise, we'll see you for Mormonism After Dark Friday at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. And I'm sure RFM, you'll have an episode Saturday sometime for folks to enjoy as well.
I got something planned.
Awesome. So folks, we will see you, if not for any of those things, we'll see you next week on the Mormon Newscast at 6 p.m. next Monday. And otherwise, everybody have a great night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. for next week's